One of the amazing things about music and producing is that it is a bottomless well of knowledge. You are always learning something new, and that is super exciting. But I kind of want to talk about the process of learning something new and what that kind of looks like, because it took me a little bit to fully grasp that this was just how learning, a new technique or whatever goes. So often when you learn something new, you get really excited about that technique. You put it on everything, and all of a sudden, your music sounds worse than it did before you learned that. This used to really discourage me before I just kind of started to embrace that this is what learning looks like. You know, I think you have to, when you learn something new, you have to overdo it to kind of reach those outer limits and hear what's really being done, to then pull it back and only use the amount it actually needs. But it takes a while for your ears to catch up with your knowledge. It takes some time to learn something, to apply it a bunch, to over apply it, to then hear, oh, this is, now I know when it's too much. But even so, even now that I have gotten comfortable with that aspect of learning, a lot of my mixing, for instance, looks like that. When I initially sit down to kind of start to really, work a mix, I still have a tendency of pushing things too far and then always have to rein them in. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I've learned that's just kind of become part of my workflow now, because if you're not pushing things past where they actually need to go, you're not really hearing the outer limits and hearing where they want to be. And so it kind of actually helps me to push things too far, call it a day with that session, dive back in the next day or two. Then it's more obvious to my ears that things have been pushed too far, and then I can start reining them back in. It's been easier for me the past couple years at least to work in that way. Instead of knowing how far to push things, seeing how far they can be pushed, pushing them a little past that, and then start reining them in to kind of fit and gel with the mix. Just embracing the fact that you will be pushing things too far, you'll be using techniques too much, and it will ruin things initially. But then once your ears start getting comfortable with those new ideas, then they can kind of pull them back in to where they need to go. So don't let it discourage you if you learn something new and things are actually sounding worse than they were before you started or before you learned that new thing. Like, that's just a process of learning. You have to get your hands dirty with the tools and, make a mess of things to really start to internalize some of these processes and techniques, and then get a better feel for when something does actually need that, when it's fine without, when it needs a little more, when it needs a little less. But yeah, just don't be afraid of that. Don't get discouraged by, ruining mixes and stuff. And also for this reason, I think it's important to not over consume knowledge. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole and watch tutorial after tutorial, and the ideas at the time are really exciting and inspiring, and you leave after a few hours being like, I can't wait to write music, learning all this new stuff. But sometimes trying too many new things at once can do more harm than good, I think. It's amazing that there are so many things to learn about music, but it's really exciting to go super deep on one or two things at a time, really start to master those, have those in your arsenal before you, jump into the next thing. Especially starting out, it can be tempting to just think you need to learn all these new things, and this next thing will be the thing that gets my music over the edge. Oh, now this, I see everyone's talking about this. Like, just focus on you, go at your own pace. It's okay if you take time between learning new things. For me, whenever I start to feel my music kind of plateau, that's when I look into, learning something new, trying something new. When my music is just flowing and I am having weeks at a time, whatever, where stuff's just coming out easily, my mixes are, going well, all this, like I'm not going to bother trying to put something new into that mix. Like I'll enjoy being in that flow state, and I kind of use learning a new technique or skill as a way to kind of recharge my practice when it starts feeling a little like sluggish or feeling a little uninspired. That's a great time to dive in, watch a couple new tutorials on, one or two topics, and then incorporate those into your practice. But you don't have to be actively learning all the time. And by that, I mean actively seeking out tutorials and practicing new techniques that you're seeing from other producers. Because even when you're not doing those things, you're still learning every time you sit down at the DAW. And it's really important to kind of learn at your own pace and in your own way. And just sitting down to write something or sitting down to work on a mix, you are doing that. You are learning, you are practicing. Learning new things isn't just sitting down and watching a bunch of tutorials. Sometimes the best learning you can do for yourself is to just write and just open the DAW and create and mess around and try new things and just have fun doing that. When that process starts feeling sluggish and when that process kind of starts hitting a plateau and you're kind of starting to get bored with it, then that's a great time to dive into a tutorial and learn something from someone else with a different perspective. But a lot of times the best learning you can do for yourself is just to write your own music, because you learn so much each and every time you sit down at the DAW. Whether or not a session turns out or not, you learn something in the process. So don't feel like you need to be sitting down and spending hours and hours every week digging through tutorials, because you don't, and you're still learning outside of that time. Every time you sit down in your studio and open the DAW, you are learning whether you realize it or not.